Okay, hello. It is 5:08 p.m. Saturday, November 8th, 2025. Mark Kulak, Houstonic.live, live recording episode 1400 even, titling this one, Candace Owens shows India is in control. And this must be right, because this is a message that cannot get through. This is a message that all of the fakes and the liars refuse to repeat. It's so serious, it's so real, and it's most likely so right, and that's why it cannot even be challenged. Because once people start to search, they're going to go, oh my goodness, it's been right in front of me the whole time. And Candace Owens, the half-white podcaster, whatever you want to call it, in the United States of America, who's been part of Turning Point USA, and is having the time of her life. I've never seen her. I've almost never seen anyone have so much fun for so long. And I guess everyone handles grief differently, but being elevated to having the most watched podcast in the world, rivaling Joe Rogan, I guess now, and just being happy and making fun videos and putting your voice through auto-tune so that you can make video shorts it's just so much fun.
Sue me. I want subpoena power. I want all of your messages. Please do me a favor today on the Charlie Kirk case. I've been clear. I want all of the smoke from all of you. I don't think you realize how real life this is for me. I went back and listened so hard. I was like, girl, don't care at all. Do not care at all. I'm over it. We're in a new time.
It's exactly what people do when their best friend is assassinated. Candace Owens, I've done some math on her last several videos. I've been doing tallies of different keywords. On the November 1st show, Candace Owens said Zionist or something with Zion in it 13 times. She said Israel 30 times and India 0 times. On her November 3rd show, she said Zionist 8 times, Israel 25 times, and India once. On November 4th, she said Zionist 12 times, Israel 31 times, and India none. On November 5th, she said Zionist 9 times, Israel 38 times, and India 0. Now, that is pretty odd metadata. And the one time she said India, it wasn't about India having any involvement in it. It was sort of like she was just listing nations in Asia. And India came to mind. So basically, she never mentions India, which is fine. People aren't required to talk about India. However, when your best friend, though, is assassinated, according to you and a few other people, even though you have all these open questions about who did it, but you're certain that it has something to do with, Turning Point USA, Christian Zionists, Jews, and Israel. Incredible certainty for someone that doesn't even know where the body is. It's pretty impressive. Anyways, she did not want to mention India ever. Now, she doesn't talk about China that much either, to be fair, but I can't see China's connection in this very easily. We can, though, see India's connection into it, because we know that just a few days after, Charlie Kirk made some potentially very, very inflammatory remarks, bringing awareness of the escalating conflict, what's been ongoing for a long time between Pakistan and India, and that the United States should not get involved in it. Very, very close to that. Longtime UN friend, Kofi Annan friend, UN communications director, and big-time diplomatic heavy hitter of India, is in New York City to pay his respects finally to the 9/11 memorial. And that's Shashi Tharoor, who has all of his books right now being published by Skyhorse Publishing, the RFK Jr. group. That's pretty impressive. Jeffrey Sachs at the UN would have been working with, or would have been working for Shashi Tharoor. You can see the man here, who's sort of looking a little bit to the side, just to the left of the man with sunglasses. Of course, it's his right, and it's appropriate, I guess, if you're in another nation, to pay your respects at memorials where serious catastrophes have happened. But there's something funny about this because, as our research shows, India was right there with 9/11, way more than I ever imagined. And the reason why people can't see it with 9/11 is because 9/11 was never meant to be a plane flying into a building after it was hijacked and then the building collapsing. That was never meant to be 9/11. It was always meant to be biological. It was always meant to be Bio 911 truth. Bio 911 truth. BIO 911 TRUTH. And Bio 911 truth is following the money. We follow the money here. I follow the money. I just don't find some money and then say, hey, everyone, just look at this money and never look at anything else. Following the money means even if you found some money, you keep looking for bigger piles of money. Following the money doesn't mean that gun running or drug running or anything else counts. Following the money doesn't mean a few $1 million or even $1 billion counts. Following the money doesn't mean paid assassinations. It doesn't mean bribery. It's not Jeffrey Epstein, whatever the heck that was or wasn't. Following the money means you find the biggest pile of money. And if you are no longer hunting for the pile of money, if you think that it's something other than the Human Genome Project taking over the evolution of the human species or taking control of it anyways, if you're not thinking controlling the AI of the future by stockpiling spent uranium fuel, which is still 97%, has 97% of its potential energy left, then you're not really following the money. You're basically distracting people and confusing people. And Candace Owens right now is leading people down one and only one path. It has to be Israel. It has to be Israel, according to Candace. And look at all of this other nonsense out there. All of these, potential upcoming elections. Israel, Israel, Israel. It's the only thing that they're willing to talk about. That's crazy. Because on the flip side, we are also encouraged to believe that the Democrat Party has been taken over by Ukraine. So we are supposed to believe as American, U.S. citizens. Some people get, people in Brazil are American too. Like, come on, just okay, let's let that one go. We are supposed to believe that the little teeny tiny territory of Israel, 9 to 12 million people, barely doesn't even make the top 50 almost with respect to GDP, controls half the United States. And the other half of the United States is controlled by the economically depressed, war-torn Ukraine. How is that even possible? Unless when you consider the fact that Israel is right now, in the future, predominantly aligned with India. And Ukraine is predominantly aligned with India. So all of these conversations about Ukrainian, billionaires or whatever, follow the money, and Ukrainian diplomats coming in, and it's Ukrainian assassins. It's all really a distraction for where the biggest population, the biggest pile of money is. It's funny when you say follow the money and then you stop at Israel. You can look at the nation with the third largest GDP and soon to be the world's largest economy in India next 10 or 15 years and say, well, I guess that doesn't count. That's not following the money. And then you stop at Ukraine. It's intentionally designed deception. Now, it has come up recently, or within the last year approximately, that Candace Owens is, I think it's been known for a while. It's not like she's hiding it, but is married to a British man, a white as snow British man. Okay, that's fine. Each their own. I hope everyone's happy. They have kids. That's wonderful. God is happy. God be praised. But her father-in-law is someone who is of fairly significant wealth and has given generously to Christian causes, Christian and in particular Jewish causes. You can go to Wikipedia. We're going to look at this real quickly here. So we go to Candace Owens. See here, Candace Owens. Candace Amber Owens Farmer. Her new married name is Farmer. And her father-in-law is Michael Farmer, Michael Stahil Farmer, also known as Baron Farmer, because he is of some royalty within England. So he is active in combating family breakdown and its repercussions, supported Brexit, and is a devout born-again Christian. I know nothing about him other than what I've read on a Wikipedia page, okay? But I don't see anything here that's particularly alarming. He was not necessarily born into money. His parents died fairly young, and he sounds like he more or less worked his ass off and could be a legitimate success story. You know, he supports Brexit. He wants stronger families. He took a year off for Bible study. You know, it's not the worst profile I've ever read. So he's a born-again Christian, having become religious when he was 35 years old. He preaches at the 800-year-old St. Helen's Church in Bishopsgate in the city, around the corner from the London Metal Exchange. He became the Christian deputy chair and trustee of the Council of Christians and Jews in 2016. He sponsors the ARC All Saints Academy in Camberwell, South London, created with the goal of improving education for disadvantaged children. I mean, he's worked with some metal companies that I've reviewed several years ago. I've forgotten some of the details. Phillips Brothers, Philbro, of course, no one else has ever done a video about any of these things. I don't know if that could be impactful here. It may not be. But what I wanted to highlight is here in August 2024, Farmer wrote a lengthy thread on X. So again, that's a bad sign. Twitter, on the subject of anti-Semitism. And again, this is Candace Owens' father-in-law and the Gaza war. And in response to comments by his daughter-in-law, Candace Owens, saying, quote, "In the view of public comments from a high-profile member of my family, I want to put my own views on anti-Semitism and Israel's current military campaign in Gaza on public record," unquote. Within 2 days, his post had attracted over 1 million views. Michael Farmer, Candace Owens' father-in-law, wrote as to anti-Semitism, "As a teenager, growing up in the wake of World War II, I became very aware of the cruelty meted out before and during the conflict against Jewish people. Because they were Jewish, I found it impossible to comprehend how humans could intentionally be as cruel as possible to others. Then, as a young man, I worked with many Jewish people in the city. The boss in one of my first jobs had come to Britain on a Kindertransport. I'm not sure what that is. I often experienced kindness and thoughtfulness from Jewish friends as well, at a time when I had few close relationships. To conclude, I should point out that I am the Christian deputy chair of the Council for Christians and Jews. This was founded in 1942 as a bulwark against anti-Semitism, and our monarch has always been its patron." So, this is Candace Owens' father-in-law. Sounds like he would have a potentially, some conflicting views with Candace Owens, and that's fine. Now, there's a little detail here, though, is that if you want to learn more about this, when this story was really being covered, who are we going to go to learn about this? Candace Owens, father-in-law, Lord Farmer, reacts to her anti-Semitic contents. As reported on August 20th, 2024, by the Times of India. So I'm sure other newspapers ran this story, but I find it curious that this narrative is being curated by the Times of India. Now, I've done some compound searches between Candace Owens and India, and I can find very little. I can find very little publicly. It's almost strange how little I can find. It's making me wonder where the money is really coming from. I suspect she is keeping a distance socially, politically, probably never visiting there, because I think that's where the real money comes from. Now, it may not be India proper. It could be the India, whatever they want to call it, the trading company, whatever pile of money that is. It could be the UK Crown, this a-specific global entity. I'm not really sure, but instead of following the money to where the real pile of money is, instead of highlighting that, gee, it's kind of strange that Charlie Kirk really kicked the hornet's nest when he said the United States should stay out of the India-Pakistani conflict, and how if there was anything that would have led to a political assassination of Charlie Kirk, it would have been his comments about India. And that's the one thing she won't ever say. Not even just say, it would be silly to think that. Nothing. She won't even allow people to hear the word India on her show. Sometimes the absence of something is in and of itself evidence. For example, if one were to go to Windber, Pennsylvania, and go to the Patrick Soon-Shiong Cancer Research Center, previously the Windber Research Center, the only center of excellence in the entire world for cancer research for the United States Army Walter Reed Hospital, and they find an empty parking lot. That's a sign that something seriously messed up is going on. You should find a parking lot with people in lab coats going in and out. You should find some booming local restaurants and canteens supporting the people working their shifts 24 hours. People should be coming in and out, visiting the families who are getting their experimental treatment. And then when you see an empty parking lot, you're like, this looks like a front, effectively, for tapping in and getting cancer data out of the U.S. Army as they're being used as the recipients of experimental gene therapy. So the absence of something does not mean there's no relationship. The absence of something does not mean it's not serious. There are such things as suspicious absences. When you know that an important person has died and then you go to the newspapers and you can't find their obituaries because they've been wiped or de-indexed, that is evidence of something. I said something kind of profound yesterday. Evidence is no substitute for thinking. Evidence is no substitute for thinking. And sometimes people are being encouraged to stop thinking by drowning them with evidence. It's sort of like what happened with JFK. How is it possible that thousands of books and millions of hours of video and research and everything else has led to no conclusive answer? Because evidence is no substitute for thinking. It's amazing how many problems you can solve just by thinking it through. What are the logical motives? What are the likely things to have happened? So without a lot of hard evidence, the logical thing here is, since we know Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is very, very friendly with Prime Minister Modi, and we also know that the Prime Minister Modi is very close with Zelenko of Ukraine. In fact, Zelenko right now needs to call Modi before visiting Putin. If that isn't a sign of how much India controls Ukraine, I don't know what is. Yet we're supposed to believe that it's never even worth mentioning this. There's been a lot of talk about Nancy Pelosi lately coming up again. Nancy Pelosi in Ukraine. And I'm just going to throw this one out there because most people just kind of suck doing research. Because when it comes time for Nancy Pelosi, when she's getting close to passing on here, when Nancy Pelosi finally steps down, her seat is being taken over by India. You do know that, right? Saikat Chakrabarti is an Indian origin man, as reported. This was, again, Times of India, challenging Nancy Pelosi in California's 11th Congressional District. He was the former chief of staff for Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. He's already worked with Bernie Sanders, and he's already worth, $50 to $100 million via some tech startup that he had. He's saying that he's running against Nancy Pelosi. But Nancy Pelosi's not going to live forever. So when the celebration finally comes that, finally, we're now it's some truth and Nancy Pelosi's going away. No, more power comes in from India. Now, this isn't to say that it's impossible for someone to come to the United States from India and become a U.S. citizen and divorce themselves from putting India first. But it is odd that we have many of these Indian-born people, they go bonkers every time H-1 visas to India are threatened. They go bonkers anytime the relationship with India is impacted. Another ass clown is Dinesh D'Souza, Indian-born man. I could never quite figure him out. Why does Dinesh D'Souza get propped up by conservatives? He's considered to be pro-Israeli. That's funny, just like India. And now Dinesh D'Souza is getting promoted predominantly because, guess what? His conflict with Candace Owens. And when he's known for providing sharp criticism of Obama, but it's all rooted on Islam, terrorism, and communism. Never the elephant in the room. The elephant in the room is, this is the most populous country in the world, India. The elephant in the room is they are on track to have the world's largest GDP, which is good for them, okay? Good for them. The elephant in the room is they seem to want to have influence in the United States to control the U.S. decision to get involved with the Pakistan war. The elephant in the room is that when someone like Charlie Kirk makes a statement that the U.S. should stay out of the India-Pakistan conflict, people die. It's either Charlie Kirk himself, who was legitimately assassinated, in which case Candace Owens is helping the most likely assassins get away from it. There is only one group that I can see that has the money and had the desire to eliminate Charlie Kirk, and that is connections to India or this UK Crown group. And that's it. That's the only group. Other than that, it was a lone wolf. And no one will say it. They want to blame it on Israel. They want to blame it on Jews. They want to blame it on Christian evangelicals. They want to blame it on Trump. They want to blame it on this and that. But follow the money. I thought following the money is what we needed to follow the money to. We got to follow the money to where it counts. And following the money means following the money to where the biggest pile of the money is, to make following the money worth following the money. And that's what I do here. And the biggest pile of the money, and that's what you need to do when you follow the money. You need to find the biggest pile of money to follow the money to that biggest pile, is India. End the story. So, as we now, everyone gets back to talking about Pelosi, it's just unspoken of. Her seat is going to go into another bucket of more power from India. When it took half a year to, cross an ocean to get to the United States, I understand why, we allowed people from other countries to run for U.S. federal offices. But given the fact that you can fly to the United States right now from any part of the world and most parts of the world in less than 18 hours, and then you can very quickly get your citizenship. I mean, how much lower can we make the bar here? And of course, if Candace Owens, wants to promote her blackness, why isn't she talking about how many seats are going to people who are not born in the United States? I thought Candace Owens was at least half black. Doesn't she have some responsibility to go, there's a lot of black Americans that are not being born into the best of circumstances. Why can't they get more opportunities? Why can't they get more opportunities? Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez seems to be promoting people from other countries over black Americans. That's pretty sad. So, one of the most important scientists in India over the last, 30, 40 years from India is Inder Verma. So India's powerhouse HIV scientist is the one that Robert Malone works with, and Robert Malone has his little scuffle with regarding patents. Really? We're supposed to believe that it's just a coincidence that the New York Times newspaper articles about using HIV for gene therapy in the late 1990s, just before 9/11, were written by this Indian scientist, who never lost his Indian citizenry, by the way, running in the United States, looking over Robert Malone.
Showing up in the United States Congress in 1999 and 2000 and presenting to the Congress of the United States of America with the leading voice and chairing the board regarding the investigation of Jesse Gelsinger, an American, by the way, who died unnecessarily from experimental genes therapy.
We're supposed to just ignore that? And then what? 28 years later, here's a dilemma, okay? Is that Judy Mikovits in the late 90s, early 2000s, just before 9/11, was also kind of sort of working for a major Indian scientist in the United States, Darim Ablashi, who founded the HHV6 Foundation. In fact, you could say that his work behind the HHV6, that's with the human herpes virus 6, was part of what led to the Whittemore Peterson Institute in Reno, Nevada. So you have Judy Mikovits working for one giant, and you have Robert Malone working for another. And going back to this is a Washington Post article that came out on February 12th, 2020, titled China's Chernobyl. The coronavirus outbreak leads to a loaded metaphor. That's weird. So the United States is being pummeled with information that coronavirus is real. It really did come out of a laboratory, maybe, or a cave. It's killing a lot of people, and it's the Chernobyl of China. Now, it's already odd that much of the evidence about the origin of the virus being out of a China lab came out of India. A very uncomfortable fact. In fact, I think the Drastic Group was started by someone from India, anonymously on Twitter, of all places. And now we have big-time editorials in the United States of America impacting public opinion, reinforcing that the virus exists, written by a Tharoor, whose dad is Shashish Tharoor, the one who is heavily published by Skyhorse Publishing, the one who wrote a book that was released on September 10th, 2001, about some 24-year-old American girl who went, supposedly this is pseudo-science fiction or fictional, went to India and had relationships with Pakistani men and Hindu men or something like that. And I guess the Hindu men were better, of course. That's exactly the type of thing that the communications director of the United Nations and friend of Kofi Annan would be talking about. But going into 9/11, that makes a whole lot of sense to me. But also a friend of Jeffrey Sachs, which kind of means that a friend of Jeffrey Sachs, colleague of Jeffrey Sachs, his son, is working at the Washington Post, an Indian band influencing U.S. opinion about where the origin of the virus is. Wow, that's kind of crazy. But I guess the title of this one, looping back, and I'm not even going to do a full intro. I think I'm just going to close out because this is kind of a summary video. Candace Owens shows India controls USA via Israel and Ukraine, and basically her absence of mentioning India and her constant mentioning of Israel. And then Candace Owens affiliates are just going crazy mentioning Ukraine over and over and over again as if it matters. It's all deflection from what matters. Follow the money. I thought Ian Carroll said follow the money. We should be following the money. And follow the money means following it to the biggest pile of money, which is India. Israel's very small. And Ukraine is very impoverished right now and very messed up, aside from some billionaires who made some money on crypto. Ukraine is a mess. And that's not a statement or slander on the people of Ukraine or Israel. Isn't it kind of messed up that in the United States you have the Democrat Party dragging around these massive Ukrainian flags into the U.S. Congress? And then you have the Republican Party, always trying to say we should be celebrating Israel. As a U.S. citizen and American, I'm not picking fights here. But it is kind of strange to be working so hard to celebrate other countries in the United States of America when our country has so many problems as it is. And right behind it, I see India. If you go to a location in Pennsylvania, which supposedly is the only center of excellence for the Walter Reed U.S. Army, and there's nobody there, that doesn't mean that nothing's going on. That means something really serious is going on. Nothing lines up. That's really, really a problem. I tried showing this a couple years ago. It almost ended very badly. But fortunately, we're still ticking along. I dodged it, let's just say it, at that time. So here we are. And I bring that up in particular because there was an Indian lawyer born in Canada. He could have been born in India, though. We don't know that. I think the backstory of being born in Canada might in and of itself be a lie, because being born in India and then becoming ambassador to India for the United States is pretty bad. But Richard Verma is another name. It's a toxic name that most fake, controlled, lying journalists who do not work really for the American people just will never say. They avoid saying that name like the plague. They just avoid saying that name. Even though he was he was a deputy director, management under Hillary Clinton within the State Department for Obama. Even though he was the ambassador to India, he was the first Indian ethnic ambassador to India for the United States of America, kind of a big deal. Even though he worked with Kerry on the Iran nuclear deal and a variety of other things. And he was a close aide to Harry Reid, so on and so forth. He was one of the first names quoted when Harry Reid, the senator from Nevada, died, was Richard Verma. Anyways, Richard Verma in the late 1990s was hired for legal counsel for the creation of that Winberg Cancer Research Center, which is now the Patrick Soon-Shiong Cancer Research Center. Patrick Soon-Shiong is a controlled narrative enough to have gotten 2 hours on Tucker Carlson. But Richard Verma, if you think he doesn't matter, then why the hell did President Biden make Richard Verma for 1 or 2 years the head of economic recovery of Ukraine? You don't think these things are connected anymore? I can't help you. And that just leads to a whole series of things which need to be revisited. There's this thing about hypnosis. Hypnosis is when you repeat things over and over again, right? When you talk about the pile of money and people need to find the pile of money, and real people look for the pile of money and don't stop at the small pile of money. Look for the money, follow the money, follow the money, follow the money, look for the biggest pile of money over there, follow the money over there, follow the money over there, follow the money, we follow the money. You follow the money to the biggest pile of money that you can find. You just don't find a big pile of money and then stop. Anyways, that's me repeating a phrase over and over again for the purposes of hypnotizing you. And I remember several years ago, there was the Pakistani mystery man. The Pakistani mystery man, the mystery man of Pakistan, the Pakistani mystery man, Pakistani mystery man of Pakistan, the Pakistani mystery man. It's a hypnosis to say it over and over and over again. And then you go, wait, U.S. has good relations with Pakistan. Maybe Imran Awan is just Indian. And then it's like, oh, now it all makes sense. And in fact, if Nancy Pelosi, whose seat is soon to be replaced by someone from India, now it all makes sense. Why that crime was just never solved, and why they worked so hard to say the word Pakistan over and over and over and over and over again. The importance of the Pakistan conflict with India I was recently reminded of it by another Tucker Carlson show where he was talking to some, white-bearded, wise-looking old man, and they were talking about Armenia. Of course, Richard Verma, the name that no one would love to say, they won't say it, they won't repeat it. Of course, he was there for the 110th anniversary memorial of the Armenian Holocaust. And India, again, very good terms with Armenia. That's one of their stronger allies. Strange because the largest shareholder of Moderna, the man who actually made the most money on Moderna, Naubar Afeyan, is Armenian. And now that makes sense. And now you know why, in spite of my best efforts to talk about the Armenian connections to Moderna, the Armenian connections to the Moderna vaccine, the Armenian connections to the Naubar Afeyan and his brother, now you know why no one picked up on that. Because that's going to lead to two things. One is Naubar Afeyan and the Human Genome Project, the life sciences groups, and, again, experimental vaccines going all the way back to 9/11. Not good. Craig Venter, of course, you're going to be led to the Judith Miller Germs book that came out September 9th, 2001. But even more concerning is you are then going to, in the other direction, realize, wow, Richard Verma was there. Richard Verma's connected with him. India's supporting that effort. That's kind of odd. Again, nobody will mention it. You're only allowed to hear Israel or Ukraine. That's it. That's the way it's been set up. America has been split in half because people are being encouraged to look at two false things. And then it's actually worse because if you're a conservative, the conservative side is being even further fractured over Israel internally. It's terrible. We can get out of this. It's not too late to get out of this. I don't know what the odds are, but it won't happen until someone genuinely follows the money. And as far as I know, I don't think anyone else has ever actually followed the money yet. They say they have. They repeat the phrase. They want you to think they have, but they haven't. So I think that's it for today. A little weird show, disjointed show. I just needed to do a little bit of a knowledge dump to keep you guys in the loop as to where I am. Just keep on trucking. Take care, everyone. Thanks for listening. God bless.